webinars and YouTube are, because this will be posted on YouTube after, are for general information purposes only and do not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor and patient relationship is formed. The use of the information on this webinar, podcast, YouTube, or materials like from this podcast are at the user's own risk, and the content of this webinar is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any conditions. So basically, if you have a health question, your doctor's opinion is the best opinion.
Don is calling me. Hold on.
Maybe Don's trying to get on here. Oh, there he is. Hi.
Hi.
You missed nothing. I read a disclaimer, and that was really about it.
I miss you both. It's been a while.
I know. What's
You
going
just
on?
saw Jason.
Redmond?
Yeah,
My boy.
I know.
We had such a nice time.
He's the best. He really is the best human. So I will just, well, before we start, so Don and I's mutual friend, a Navy SEAL named Jason Redmond, was in team 10 right before Shane. And actually, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think I saw a post about him that I think I actually chatted with him on the phone once about Cronometer.
He's a fantastic person. And I met him through Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Wow.
I know her.
You know, it's that thing, like birds of a feather. Every person we introduce each other to, 99.9% of the time, I think we're both happy with it.
We're almost always happy.
We're almost always happy, but we, you know, it's fortunate, you know, when you're around good people.
I agree.
Like the two of you right now.
Oh,
Lisa,
I just love you
so
both.
long.
I know you've been vacationing.
I could just hug you right now.
I know. I miss you too. Yeah, your energy is so infectious.
Thank you.
It's funny because talking to you actually like keeps me more motivated for my goals.
Everybody.
I haven't
Yeah,
been running. I haven't been running as much lately. And so I'm getting back into some of things. So you're leading by example. Like, it's not like Don tells me to do anything, but he's just like so on it that it makes me want to be more on it. So
Thank you.
So I'm just going to kick it off. For those of you who don't know, this is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and Don Saladino. They're two of our amazing influencers, I would say, or partners with Cronometer. And we're here today to answer questions. Emily, as always, hi Em, she's in our chat. She will answer any Cronometer questions, link to user manuals. There she is. Emily's the best, actually, just like honestly one of my favorite coworkers. She's so good. Just all the goodness. Oh, Gigi's back. She was here last time. Hi Gigi, hi Angela. So this month we're structuring how we are doing content a little bit differently with Cronometer now. Because we now have a marketing team, we've planned the year ahead, which is awesome. And this month we're focusing on women's health, and then next month we're going to be focusing on men's health. We've been making some posts. We're kind of breaking it down by like different life stages on our social media. So last week was for 20 somethings. This week is for 30 somethings, which is very relatable. It's pretty cool to make content that way. Next week is 40 somethings, and then we're going to continue on in that vein. So I do have a bevy of questions for you both about women's health, but this is always really about the people that are here. So if anyone has any questions, it doesn't necessarily have to be about women's health. You guys can just fire them off in the chat and we will answer them. But I do have a long list of things to discuss otherwise. So if anyone has any, does anyone know how to raise the volume on a phone? Everyone is super quiet. Can you guys hear me all right?
I
You
can
sound
hear
great.
you. I can hear you beautifully.
I don't know. Jacqueline, if you're on an iPhone, I just use like the side button here to make it higher. Sometimes I talk softly, so I didn't know if that was the case. Hopefully we get that figured out, but we will have our recording later. Check your settings. Mason says check your settings. That's great advice.
Yeah, it's gotta be, that's not on your end, I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so some questions that I have.
Great.
Yeah, I'm just gonna like dive deep into this. So we've actually been doing a lot of user research lately because we have someone on our marketing team and that is her primary role, which is so awesome. So I'm just gonna jump right into some of the questions that came up from some of our research. So we know from our research that some of the most popular diets for women using Cronometer is keto. Around 14% of our female users follow it, especially those in the 45 and older age groups. Vegan diets have about 13%. Should there be any specific considerations for women on those diets?
Well, sure. Number one, Don, is it okay if I kick this one off? Okay.
Yeah.
So the ketogenic diet is 70% or higher fat. It is typically protein is 10% or less, and carbohydrates fall into the range of, it usually breaks down to be 20 grams or less. It's a very high fat. A ketogenic style diet is a high fat, lower protein, which is typically people feel that it's a high protein diet. It's actually not. Now, the 14% that are using a ketogenic diet, are there things that they should consider? Well, number one, it's a tool. There is no magic fix to nutrition. I will also say that there are metabolic implications to a ketogenic diet. And what does that simply mean? It means that, well, number one, some people will respond favorably to it and other people will not. So for example, individuals that may have higher cholesterol, those individuals may not be the best people to be trying a ketogenic diet. I will say in terms of hormonal regulation, this is purely anecdotal. A ketogenic diet over the long term may not be as beneficial as, say, a more balanced diet for hormonal health. And I know Don very well. I'm sure Don agrees with some of those things.
Yeah, so I mean, I basically agree with everything that you say. So, this
is easy. You just need like an upvote arrow.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because I don't think we've ever not been in line with anything. I mean, the only thing that we're personally probably a little off on is that I'm much more of a carb person that she is personally.
Yeah.
But that's our own personal use, right? I think, Dr. G, I mean, the first thing I ask is, why is someone going to the ketogenic diet, right? Like, I mean, you would admit, like, there are some benefits to using a ketogenic diet out there, right? Like, there is a specific individual that this might, be applicable for. But the one thing I know for a fact is I'm gonna throw a number out there. I'm gonna say probably north of 85% of the people who, and this is a totally made up number, but this is from I am around. I would say north of about 85% of the people who are trying it are usually trying it because they want some type of like a weight loss anecdote, right? Like they want something that's going to help move the needle on the scale.
Yeah.
And that, that I think is when the conversation can get a bit tricky, right? The first question that I'm asking, and you just said it earlier, if it's someone's trying to get in ketosis and they're on a high protein diet, well, they may not be getting into ketosis, right? Like, how many people out there are doing keto and are actually in ketosis, right? So I like to separate, like, there's the ketogenic diet and then there's somewhat of a fat adapted diet, which I think becomes a little bit more about like what the Atkins diet was, right? Like you're not necessarily in ketosis. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I think my main question is, why is someone experimenting with this diet?
Yeah.
If their answer is it's because of, their scale hasn't moved, which I'm probably going to say is the majority of that 85% that's experimenting with the diet. I just, well as I do, is that you start dehydrating the muscle of water. And
Totally.
I think then what we think is the ketogenic diet really becomes more about yo-yo dieting. We spend all week trying to do the ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
Up dehydrating our muscle of water. We have a bad night out of eating. And a lot of people out there listening have done it, right? Like you start your New Year's resolution, you're doing your new diet, you're doing your new diet, you've lost 8 pounds, you've been completely miserable for 2 weeks, you haven't had a dessert, you haven't had a sip of alcohol. And the next thing you know, you have one night out. It was that friend's birthday that happened to have fallen on, January 15th or 16th, where you're like, all right, I'll make the exception. And you wake up the next day and you're ready to hang yourself because you gained, 3/4 of that weight back,
Totally.
6 out of that 8 pounds has been, you're like, at that point, you're like, why am I doing this? And that's when we get into this yo-yo dieting approach. And that's when I think people start getting discouraged because they're looking for a quick fix answer. And there's no quick fix answer to all this stuff.
I think part of it is just how it's sold though, as well. You know what I mean? Like any diet, I'm not talking about the ketogenic diet. Every single diet is talking about like how quickly you can lose weight and that kind of thing. And I think at Cronometer, we're like way more focused on sustainable weight loss.
Yeah.
I know that we definitely prefer like the slower is better approach and sticking to a diet that works for everybody, which the ketogenic diet does work for a lot of our users. And I did it because I wanted to be a guinea pig, and I was like, I'm going to try this for 30 days. I'm like Dawn. I run it predominantly on carbs. Like obviously I get sufficient protein, but my body loves carbs and I have way more energy. So I ended up going back, but I thought it was really cool to try for a little bit.
Yeah.
I did see that weight loss. I lost like 8 pounds in 2 weeks, but of course, like Dawn touched on, it was a lot of water weight. And when I reverted back to a regular diet, then for sure I ended up gaining that all back. So I wanted to relate to our users though. There are some.
Yeah, we're getting some good questions.
We are now.
Yeah, so
I appreciate that. Heather asked, and while we're on this topic, what are some negative repercussions of a ketogenic diet?
So I would say, well, number one, a clinical indication. There's 2 reasons why I would prescribe a ketogenic diet. Number one, military operators with head trauma. Or number 2, it was originally discovered for children with seizures. So those are the 2 medical indications. And then there's some evidence that it can help with certain types of cancer. So if I were to pick my top 2 and then maybe my third there, I feel a little iffy in terms of cancer, but there is, depending on the cancer, some good benefits. So that would be clinical indications medically for people that would use it. Now, the other side is, who would you not recommend? I think that there's no one answer for that. I have seen in clinical practice that, again, the ketogenic diet is 70 to 80% fat, 5 to 10% carbs, and then 10 to 20% protein. So if an individual is looking to optimize muscle mass, this is not the diet for them. Also, older individuals, this would not be my primary go-to diet. Also, and I say this hesitantly, women who are trying to get pregnant, and there's some women that do fantastic on a ketogenic diet, but for me personally, in my clinical practice, a ketogenic diet for pregnancy would not be my first go-to. So those are some of the reasons why I would not do it. Where I would do it is in personal experimentation and those other medical indications.
It like just reading through some of these comments, I think it's so interesting that almost everybody here knows what the ketogenic diet is.
Yeah.
And just how mainstream it is, it's really interesting. A lot of people are contributing that they've either like tried it or
and I tried it. I tried it. I was very unsuccessful.
I've done it for periods of time. And I think before I knew what metabolic flexibility was, there were times during the year when my body just wasn't, Dr. G's gonna be shocked. I just felt heavy from carbohydrates. Maybe it was, I don't even think it was that my activity level was diminishing. I felt like my nutrition plan was really going well for 7-8 months and everything was getting a little bit monotonous. And then suddenly, I remember doing a few meals without carbs and just feeling great, and then going into ketosis and spending 6 weeks there, and it worked fantastic for me. And then at a certain point I overstayed my welcome with it, right? I started feeling really flat. Energy started diminishing. I lost a little bit too much weight. I was afraid I probably lost a little bit of muscle mass in there as well. So these were really good indicators for me. But what I did like it for, though, was at the time was to promote metabolic flexibility. Now I mix more fats in with my carbs. And back then it was like, you were keeping, you remember those bodybuilding days, 10, 12 years ago, you're keeping fats as low as possible. We weren't really focusing on the importance of fats with hormone function or satiation or, even the oils for your skin or specific things that we look at now, we know are really important. So that was, that was a time where I would definitely play with it a little bit. And I did find benefit to using it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Kim, a couple people just want to move on from the ketogenic diet. So that's great. We're here to discuss a bunch of different things. This is all about you guys. So thanks for the feedback. Amanda has a great question. She says, as someone, she's in her early 40s and she's seen some of her friends go through menopause. She's not there yet, but is there anything she can do to proactively manage the side effects that they're having? So that's sweats, irritability, osteoporosis.
Yeah. So one of the things that we see, so thank you, Amanda. This is a great question. Anything you can proactively do to manage side effects. One of the biggest things that we see in women that transition perimenopause, menopause is weight gain. And it's not because something magical happens and you gain a bunch of weight. There's a few things that have the potential to happen. Estrogen decreases. And this is the time where women, not just estrogen decreases, but all hormones. And this is the time where women lose the most muscle mass. This is the time to really make sure going into it that body composition is optimized and you are resistance training and then throwing in high intensity interval training and really monitoring carbohydrate intake at this time. So this is that perimenopausal time where, number one, you want to make sure that you're also not having ebbs and flows of blood sugar. Sometimes that sweats and irritability can often be due to those vasomotor issues, right? Those hormone changes, but also vasomotor and hormone changes, but also most uncommonly thought of is blood sugar regulation. So when your blood sugar goes too low, you do get counter-regulatory hormones like cortisol and a number of other counter-regulatory hormones that can increase irritability. And then, of course, osteoporosis, you have to make sure protein, vitamin D, K, and calcium are optimized.
Dawn, is there anything on, a more of a working out front that people could do to try to minimize some stuff? Like, should we be building more muscle, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like, no matter what your goals are, I mean, unless I'm working with, a specific runway model who has to have dimensions that are X, Y, and Z, right? Like that is very specific. The importance of muscle, I think the value put into training to help develop muscle is so overlooked. Like muscle is our body armor. That is something where as we age and we start taking spills, my grandmother took a spill and that was the decline of her life, right? Because when she landed and shattered her elbow, she then had to go into surgery and she was under anesthesia for almost 11 hours, which is a little bit too long, right?
Yeah.
It's too long, but she didn't they couldn't put her back together. She didn't have the bone density and she didn't have the body armor on her body. So I'm excluding right now models that need to be specific for runway or Victoria's Secrets, or people that I have worked with where, okay, they have a job at hand and they have to fit that role. We all need muscle. We all should be focusing to put muscle on. But the problem is, it's the misconception of what comes with putting muscle on. Well, I don't want to get bigger. I'm like, all right, well, Cindy Crawford didn't get bigger. Blake Lively didn't get bigger. Emily Blunt didn't get bigger. Annie Hathaway didn't get bigger. How do these women that not only I've worked with, I can name another 1,000 women in Hollywood who have great physiques, who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. How do they do it? How do they maintain that body composition? They don't get on an elliptical for 7 days a week. And ride on an elliptical for, an hour a day. Yes, there is some heart health benefit. And yes, your conditioning, might be better than it would be if you were just sitting on a couch all day, right? But the importance of having muscle as part of your fat burning furnace, the importance of muscle as your protection for your metabolism, right? Like burning fat calories at rest because we have more muscle in our body. These are areas that they're not taken seriously. People just want to go in, they want to get on their bike and they want to bike. And is it better than nothing? Absolutely, it's better than nothing. But if you're looking for more in your life, if you're wondering why you keep throwing a ball against the wall and you're expecting a different outcome, you gotta look. This is not, this is all nutrition, isn't it? It's all diet. I could just do whatever I want with my training. No, you can't. It does. We all want to say it's 90% nutrition, 80% nutrition. You know what? I always say this is 100% mental and how we're approaching things. And if you are approaching something incorrectly, or if you're approaching something in a way where it's not giving you a different outcome, we got to look at it differently. And statistically, in my 40,000 plus hours of working with people in my life, in my 25 years as a professional coach, it's the same thing over and over and over. It's the same line. Well, let me start doing cardio first and drop some of the weight, and then I'll get to the weightlifting. I'm like, well, wrong. Let me, I'm not ready for that yet. I need to just, build up my conditioning first. I'm like, well, wrong. Do them in conjunction with each other. Focus on putting on muscle. You will not get bigger if your nutrition plan is where it needs to be. Now, if you're cheating on your food a little too frequently, if you're having alcohol a little bit too frequently, water retention will come with that. Inflammation will come with that. And yes, resistance training then, especially if you're in a caloric surplus, can go in the direction that you're not looking for it to go in. So yes, aesthetically, you might start putting on size, but if you really stay true to your nutritional plan and you do what someone like Dr. G is telling you, or I'm telling you to do, and you try and give it some time and to see a level of improvement, yes, down the road, we can get down to having some fun, and you could be sitting on the street with Dr. Gabrielle eating pretzels. So yes.
I'm never gonna live that down ever. But I will tell you, I did try to sabotage Don. I sent him some treats.
Yeah, they're all gone, by the way.
What kind of treats?
No, they're actually delicious. I will give this company an endorsement because I thought they were fantastic. And my daughter and my son, they would go and they'd have one. And I actually did have a couple of them, but they were these paleo desserts.
Paleo treats. Yeah. They're amazing.
Amazing. I think if you're going to have a treat, you got a little bit of a sweet tooth once in a while, that's fine, but I wouldn't be,
So they are, so they are, one of the co-owners is actually a SEAL.
Very good.
He was actually, oh my gosh, he was actually one of Shane's BUDS instructors.
Well, he's fantastic already. What can I say?
How about that? But
Shane is Dr. G's husband.
Yeah. So anyway, so I always try to support them. It's an amazing company, but I usually
my man crush.
So I usually send. So I had originally started giving Don for every year of his birthday, I would give him that in pounds of beef. I did that, right? It was actually the pounds of beef, and I had to carry it from Union Square. I think it might have been. It was like your 39th or 40th birthday.
I
thought it was going to be 29 pounds forever.
No, it was like your 39th or 40th birthday.
Oh, what a mess.
That's amazing.
And I carried all that. I was like, I need 40 pounds.
And that's when you built your muscle.
Love you. My sister over here, I love her.
And I'm never doing that again. It was very far for me. Anyway.
You're a warrior.
Yeah. Anyway, moving along. Sorry, guys.
There's a couple good questions loaded in the queue here. What are the key and needed vitamins for a woman going through menopause? Faustina would like to share with her mom because she's concerned about it. And wonderful. Besides high protein.
Yeah. Okay. I actually prepared this question. And as you're going through menopause, well, really everything, setting aside the macronutrients, one of the biggest things is that we see is a change in bone density. So making sure your calcium, vitamin D and K2 are within normal ranges, and just really, and this is the time where I do recommend calcium supplementation because it's so important. The other thing is in that pre-menopausal period, not necessarily post-menopausal, but it is something that I see as a decrease in iron. So eventually women stop bleeding, but prior to that, iron is really a big thing.
We actually just shared a blog on why you need iron, which, Emily, if you could just drop that in here, that would be helpful.
And then one more thing is fish oil. So fish oil for brain function is really important. Omega-3 fish oil, omega-3, EPA, DHA, all that's very important for brain function. And this is the time.
Can I jump in for 1 second? I'm seeing something from Ruth Roper here. Ruth Roper, walking is really hard. Not that I'm walking hard. Ruth, I love the fact that you're moving. All right. And from that past comment that I said, I don't want to devalue if you are doing cardio and you feel, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone who may have been doing this for a while, right? Like if you're just getting into this and you're starting to work on walking and it's difficult, tremendous, fantastic. I'm talking about for someone who is just, they're kind of hitting their head a little bit. They're saying, well, I've been doing this for years and it's like I'm spinning, it's like a hamster wheel and nothing's improving. And I'm like, well, what have you been doing? Well, I'm on the elliptical 7 days a week. That's when I'm saying, things need to be addressed a little bit differently. But for those of you out there listening to this, just get moving. If last year you didn't get off the couch one day, make your goals 5 minutes a day. There is no best. There is just a level of improvement. If you cheated on your diet 365 days last year and you can cut that into half, I am really happy. I am not someone who is turning around telling you that you have to do it the way that I do it or Dr. Gabrielle does it. We have practiced that. We have implemented this into our lifestyle for a lifetime. And it would be more difficult for us to go the other way and eat pizza every night, right? But if you're just getting started, just give me a little bit more. That's what I'm asking for. And if you take that approach every day, we're going to be in a good spot. Sorry about that, but I had to be clear.
Awesome. You're killing it, Ruth, by the way. Just getting out there.
Ruth, I love you. You're already awesome.
Edward has a question about improving metabolic flexibility. Do you eat protein and fat with one meal, then have carbs and protein with another meal? And how do you maximize metabolic flexibility?
Who wants to take this one?
It's one of you two.
I can lead off.
Take it and then I'll chime in.
Add to it. Yeah, doctor, I don't mind going first. She'll come with a smarter response anyway, so it kind of works out. She'll add what I leave out. Yes to both, right? So one thing that I use for metabolic flexibility I really like is a device called Lumen, and that's like almost an educated way of carb cycling. So it's this like little device here. I can have a box and you breathe into the chamber, and every day it's letting you know whether you're burning more fats or carbs, right? And it does that by measuring the carbon dioxide that's expelled from your breath. If you didn't have, and this here I've been using for a long time, and it's when I said earlier that I used to go into ketosis or fat adapted, it was when I wasn't actually using this and I wasn't understanding the importance of implementing fats and carbohydrates. Normally though, with how I do it, even if I didn't have access to Lumen, if fats are really high one day, carbs are going to drop down one day. And that's, a term we use called carb cycling, right? Where protein stays pretty consistent and then the fats can be used as your energy source, or your carbs can be used as your energy source. And normally it's like undulating. If you're doing a high day, a medium day, and a low day, as the carbs start dropping down, the fats start raising up. So we can at least stay around our maintenance calories, right? Because we just can't keep, you keep removing sometimes.
Right.
Energy, a lot of people won't respond well to that. So I know I kind of call that, Dr. G. I haven't heard anyone else say, actually, Dr. Dwayne and I were talking about it, carb cycling for metabolic flexibility. That's the way that we would set it up if we wanted to keep our metabolism somewhat flexible. So but what you're saying right now, and I've done for years, if you're doing a high carb meal, fats go really low. If you're doing a really low carb meal, fats may go high. That was like an old traditional way that like a lot of my bodybuilder friends used to do it. And it worked really well, actually.
Love it. Are you ready? I'm going to add to this.
You always do.
So this is a really good paper from Cell Metabolism, which is, the Super Bowl, and it talks a little bit about metabolic flexibility. And so when we think about metabolic flexibility, just for people that maybe aren't familiar with it, it's the ability for the body to meet the demands with proper fuel selection. So what does that mean? So basically, when you are at rest, like Don had said earlier, you would be burning fatty acids. So skeletal muscle would be burning fatty acids. When you eat a meal, if you're eating a glucose meal, then the goal will be then to metabolize glucose. And it's the ability to switch between fuel utilization. In my opinion, right, the best way. So, if you were considered metabolically inflexible, that would be someone who, say, like is potentially diabetic and they are continuously in a process of gluconeogenesis or making a lot of glucose. They would likely be less metabolically flexible, right? So at rest, they even have more glucose. So in a short answer, from a perspective of physical health, being lean and being well trained is going to allow you to really have the metabolic flexibility defined by fuel selection. Does that make sense? So it's really about being lean, healthy, and physically active, and then eating within a calorie zone that is not overconsumption. That would be the way I think about how you would do metabolic flexibility. And I would not add anything other than that to Don's
Thank you.
response.
Very good, Don.
That's it feels like a lot of just like knowing yourself, that takes a lot of work and time and effort, but obviously it's worth it. Chris has said that much of the features set in Cronometer revolve around someone looking for weight loss success. Moving forward, is there any plan to add more muscle gain focused features? So I have a question on my own end about this, but then I will address this with Chris as well. So we do obviously have weight loss settings that you can use with Cronometer, but then there's the option to maintain your weight as well. And that would be based on your unique settings, like your BMR and your activity level and all of your exercise and that kind of thing. There's a formula. There's also an option in there to gain weight. But my question would be for you guys, if you're trying to gain muscle and not fat, what would you do? And how would you know that you're being successful? Like what steps? So I come to you today and I say, I want to gain muscle. How do I know if I'm gaining muscle and not body fat? And how would I even go about doing that?
So from my perspective, you have to track it. And this could be a bioimpedance machine or a DEXA. DEXA again doesn't look directly at skeletal muscle, but it does look at fat and then it extrapolates the rest. Being consistent and really knowing your starting point is essential. Interestingly, to gain muscle, when we're thinking about muscle hypertrophy, the requirement is metabolic stress, physical tension, right? Which Don would be lifting a weight or whatever, ribosomal biogenesis, and then which is a creation of new proteins. And then the last part would be also calories. And that's where I think people go a little bit crazy is they increase calories a bit too much depending on their activity. And to gain muscle, I mean, you could perhaps increase 200 to 300 calories. Nothing crazy. It doesn't have to be this massive calorie ingestion, but you do have to track. And if you then find that you are putting on body fat, then you have to scale back.
Is there a macronutrient if you're looking at increasing by 200 to 300, like you suggested? Is there a macronutrient that we should predominantly be consuming being like aware of wanting to gain muscle? Should we add those calories from protein, from carbs, from fat?
I think it depends on where they're at, right? I mean, if
100%.
if you have a 200-pound male and they're already at, 250 grams of protein, we probably don't need to bump protein anymore, right? But I think you got to look at each macronutrient and say, all right, where's this individual? And what's fascinating about it is there are ways like to figure out. I keep using the term total daily energy expenditure, right? Like, what is your maintenance level of calories? You can use a Mifflin equation. You can go in for RMR testing. Now, like, these Apple Watches are getting pretty accurate now. Like, I've been matching them up with Aura, and they're all getting.
Oh, mine are super close. My numbers are super close
now. 5 years ago was a different conversation, but
yeah.
if my TDE on this thing is like 3,600, maybe it's 3,500 a year, like we're in the ballpark. I think what someone really needs to do is find a way to measure, find out where that ballpark is. And then you got to spend some time either trying to get there or staying there if you haven't been there. So there's several different people that I'll work with. Someone might come in to me, Dr. G, like say their total daily burn is 3,000 calories and they're consuming only 1,500 calories. I mean, if putting on muscle is their goal, I'm sure you would agree that like we have to start slowly bringing up those calories. I'm not going to jump, someone 1,500 calories overnight. I might take a little bit more of a methodical approach and then start bumping up calories, maybe 250 a week or 200 a week, depending on the size of the individual. And if protein is the first thing that's kind of in the dumps, that's probably one of the first areas that I'm trying to focus on driving up. I mean, if carbs are so low also, maybe it's half and half, but on weekly, I'm just figuring out some type of a strategy to start driving that number up. And then once you get to that number, I feel like you got to spend some time there. And when I say spend some time there, most people out there are like, oh, I'm eating a lot today, right? Like I hit my 3,000 calories and the next day they're at 2,000. Right. And then maybe for another 2 days, they're at 2,800. And then, for that next day, they're at 1,500. There's so much volatility that their body is never truly able to adapt. And I think that's a problem also.
Yeah.
Great.
I agree.
It's very sunny here. I feel like
it looks like you're being kissed by an angel or something.
I am. I'm here with you guys. Bruno has a question, and then someone seconded it. Mark seconded it. So we definitely need to address it. Okay. So Bruno said, what about mixing fat and carbs? Is Randall cycle a concern? And then I just went, because I was like, what is Randall cycle? I went and Googled it, so I would have some kind of idea, and then I could share that with you guys. So the Randall cycle, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what the internet tells me it is also known as the glucose fatty acid cycle. It's a metabolic process involving the competition of glucose and fatty acids for substrates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, where was the question? Who is the question? I'm just trying to.
Bruno asked it it would be 7:29 your time.
Okay. Let's see here. Yes. Okay.
Can't find it. Oops. Just clicked off.
What about mixing fats? Okay, so the Randall cycle is basically it explains the elevated fatty acid oxidation, right, and reduced carbohydrates. When you are mixing a meal, let's take a step back. Glucose will always dominate your metabolism. And the reason I say this is because glucose will always be the priority to get rid of. And it is because it is the only macronutrient that is toxic. Glucose in and of itself it remains in a very tightly controlled range in the bloodstream. There is only one mechanism of action to decrease blood glucose by the body, and that is insulin. As on the flip side, for low levels of blood sugar, there are multiple different mechanisms to raise it. So the reason I say this is because the question is, what about a mixed fat meal? mixing fat and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates will always be dominating the metabolism because while glucose is necessary at high levels, it is toxic to the cells. In fact, elevated levels of blood sugar over a 2-hour period is the definition of diabetes. So all that being said, mixing fat and carbohydrates, not a problem. It is about your total meal intake, depending on if you're being active or sedentary. And again, glucose will always dominate metabolism. So there's that.
Okay, I think Mark is responding to what you just said. Hopefully that's correct, Mark. So basically, is a meal high in both carb and fat a good idea? In a cellular level, the processing of one down-regulates the transportation of the other, if I'm understanding correctly.
So a mixed carbohydrate fat meal is not an issue. I think that there's a danger by getting too granular from a cellular process. I think a better way that is applicable to think about this is how much glucose can the body dispose of at rest. So that means if we know that we want to mitigate blood sugar swings and insulin, you want to keep your carbohydrate intake at a meal threshold no higher than 50 grams. If you want to have fat and carbohydrates at a meal, you have to really think about a 24-hour period. Like, what is your total calorie range in a 24-hour period? When it comes to distortion of metabolism at rest, a mixed meal is fine as long as it's in your caloric range. Anything above 50 grams of carbohydrates, if an individual is not super active or active at that time, will increase insulin, and the ability for the body to dispose of glucose at rest that meal should not exceed 50 grams. And that's just based on the disposal of how much goes in muscle, how much goes in the other organs, red blood cells, all of it. So that would be my answer.
That makes good sense, and thank you.
Michael Russo. Well, I eat about 100 to 150 grams of chicken liver once a week consistently. Is that too? 100 to 150 grams is like, I think that's probably in relation to protein, like 24 to 36 grams of protein, roughly in that range, I think. I would not recommend I don't know, Dr. G, just having chicken liver alone though. Like chicken liver, I mean, do you have any problem with that? But like just having that alone as a protein, like where are your other nutrients coming from?
So I think he's more, I would agree with you. So I think he's eating once a week consistently. If I'm understanding you,
yeah, what's that,
Michael, you're talking about, are you eating too much in vitamin A? I would have to calculate how much vitamin A is in that amount. I would agree with Don. It's probably not your ideal source. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Would you need additional supplementation with chicken liver? I actually think it's a really good source of a ton of nutrients. Depending on if you had a specific need, then yes, you could add in others, but I do think liver really covers a lot.
I mean, from a macro standpoint.
Oh yeah, from a macro standpoint.
I don't mean from a micro, I mean from a macro standpoint. Like, do you think you need, like, wouldn't you have something else with it? Like at least a vegetable, even though, right? Or a carbohydrate.
Yeah.
Like something, I don't know. I never consume a meal without some type of like fiber with it, right? Like so I'm either having, a starch or a grain or obviously vegetables. I try and get in every meal, or even like a fruit, like something that's going to help move everything through.
Yeah.
Fiber.
Right.
Love fiber. There are some questions as well in the Q&A section, not just in the chat. So Gigi asks us, what is the importance of supplementing K2 when you take vitamin D3 for bone health? Does it help?
It's synergistic. So the idea of supplementing with K2 is synergistic. It helps move it into the cells.
Awesome. Megan asks, what are your thoughts on krill oil compared to fish oil? And is there a difference?
There is a difference in the omega amount. they are not the same.
Which would you recommend?
Omegas.
The fish
As
oil
opposed
or
to
the-
krill, but krill has anthocyanins. So yeah, krill has anthocyanins, which is a different antioxidant. So it's a different component that omega-3 does not have.
I was hearing that krill wasn't going to be as easily available. Like it was actually becoming scarce. Is that true, or is that?
That I don't know. Yeah.
I'll have to Google that after. Google has all the answers I need. Chris has a great question. What's the best way to increase calcium for a postmenopausal woman that is unable to consume dairy? How do you get enough calcium when you can't do it?
I would supplement.
Perfect. That's very cut and dried. Okay. This is a specific case by case. Laura asked this in the Q&A if you guys want to have a look. What is a healthy macro balance for a 63-year-old woman who is insulin resistant, but otherwise very healthy, a normal weight, etc.?
So I would say you really have to prioritize protein. So there's a little, so typically for my more mature individuals, I start with 30 grams of protein 3 times a day at the bare minimum. And the reason is because it helps with metabolic correction. And this is the concept of even distribution of protein. That is the bare minimum, but it's a great place to start if you are typically a higher carbohydrate eater or even higher fat, or maybe you haven't planned your meals. This is a solid place to start. Number one, it allows for improving satiation. So you'll be much less likely to kind of overeat. And number two, it will begin to protect muscle mass. If you control for carbohydrates, you can impact triglycerides, which are really important as we think about looking at overall cholesterol. I use that word loosely. And it is something that can be utilized long-term. Again, I don't know how much you weigh, but this is a safe place to start. And then again, I wouldn't go over for you 40 grams of carbohydrates per meal. And I would focus on high fibers with it because of also insulin resistance.
Awesome. Brittany asked us, is it best to measure your foods with measuring cups or weighing your foods? From a Cronometer standpoint, the most accurate data is always going to be with a weigh scale because, people definitely use measuring cups differently, like something like oats. I use oats all the time.
I always measure in ounces. That's just something I know. Some people like using grams. I've just always used ounces. And I don't even use an electronic scale. I use one of those big old school scales with a metal tray. And
wow.
Yeah, because I just like dumping my food in there. I get my reading, I put it into my Cronometer, and then I dishwash the thing, or sometimes I'll lay a paper towel down on it if it's something dry, just so I don't mix flavors and stuff. I don't know.
My process feels very easy. I have an electronic scale and I make this protein bowl consistently. I've talked about it before. It looks disgusting, but it's delicious. And all I do is I continually zero out the scale after I add something. So I'll put the bowl, for example, on the weigh scale, and then I'll turn my scale on. It'll go to 0, so it doesn't weigh the bowl. Then I'll add my oats, and then it will say like 35 grams of oats or something. And then I'll shut it off, zero it out again, and then add my next, and just flailing everywhere, feeling very Italian. And then I'll just continually zero them out and just continually add stuff to the bowl. And for me, that's definitely the quickest. But I'm also a huge data nerd. So I think that the answer there, Brittany, is whatever is going to keep you tracking, whatever is easiest for you and the most sustainable, for sure. I don't always use a scale, but when I do, it's certainly more accurate. Gigi, I'll send you the recipe for that. It's pretty easy. Oh yeah, Mason. I'll actually make a post on it and then share it. Hopefully I don't offend anyone with halibut's. Everyone's asking what my protein bowl is. Okay, really quick and dirty now. I have to share it. So I do 1 scoop of vanilla protein powder, and then I do 2/3 of a cup of some kind of milk. I actually use a protein dairy milk. It has extra protein and lower sugar. And then I put in 1 tablespoon of cacao, which is just a fancy way of saying cocoa. I like it. It sounds fancier. Some people say it. I love it. And then a 1/4 cup of oats, and then a tablespoon of peanut butter. And I mix it all up, and then I throw it in the microwave for 1 minute and 36 seconds. Don't ask me why, but that just works out really well. And then I eat it.
36 seconds. How did you even come up with that?
1 minute and 36, because if you overdo it, it's like drier. And if you underdo it, it's too watery. So, I mean, I've made it every day for almost like a year. And then my protein bowl, it has almost 50 grams of protein in it. And because for me, a protein was a hard nutrient to get a hold of, like to get under control, or to reach really, because I don't consume a lot of meat at all. So, and I have edamame and that kind of thing. And it's awesome. It's like dessert all the time. Now I really want it. Anyway, Mason says that he feels me on the exact times of a microwave. It's the truth. It totally is. Like popcorn, 1 minute, 32 seconds. Like there's a window. Anyway, that is my welcome to my life. Every day, the same thing. Yeah, Mark also zeroes out his scale incrementally. Yeah, that's cool. That's neat. I wish that mine was that fast. Okay. What else? There was a couple more questions, but we are reaching to towards the end of the call. If you guys just want to look at the Q&A section, I'll read it to everybody else so everyone knows what we're talking about. Edward says, when I eat any certain type of fat, even a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, I break out in acne, and a varicose vein I have will appear to get worse. Although when I only eat carbs, my skin is clear and my vein improves. I'm worried I'm not getting healthy fats because of this. And I might be potentially making my own problems worse. Do you have any insight on why this could be happening, and what foods do you personally eat to get your omega-3s in daily?
Well, if it bothers you to eat that, then I would consider omega-3 fish oil. So that would be a way to perhaps get it in. I wouldn't know of a mechanism of action as to why that's happening. Yeah, unless
so happy you got. I wasn't. You notice how I just wasn't going to answer that question. I was like,
okay.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't mean to lie. I mean, that's very. Let me ask you a question. What about the quality of olive oil? Right, like. I'm hearing that a lot of these olive oils aren't necessarily what they say they are. They could be rancid on the shelves. I don't know, maybe I don't know. I'm spitballing here a little bit, but I don't know.
No comment.
Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't know. I'm spitballing there. I mean, I joined this fresh pressed olive oil club because I got really freaked out of the olive oil.
No, did you?
No, I started having olive oil sent in from Italy. It's actually a pretty cool club. But every quarter they send you 3 bottles of olive oil from a specific region, because I was all panicked about it sitting on shelves and being under higher temperatures.
It's amazing that the world has subscriptions to anything now. You just subscribe to olive oil. That's amazing.
Yeah, everything.
Emily also shared, last month we covered some hair, skin, and nails and nutrition.
Yeah.
And we did write a blog about the correlation between nutrition and acne. So that might be worth checking out as well.
I love it.
Looks like did we get another? Edward specified that his quality is first preset extra virgin. I don't know what that means. I feel like I have a lot of olive oil homework that I need to go home and do. I also feel like I'm missing a joke that you guys are gonna have. Are you?
No, not at all.
You're
Not at
not.
all.
You're not.
Okay.
You're not
'Cause
missing
I'm
either.
like I want to be part of the loop.
No,
and I
no,
want-
no, no.
No. It was just, I don't know. I was thinking the olive oil thing just totally threw me for a second. I was like, oh my God. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Edward is firing off one last question, I think, unless anyone else wants to sneak one in. Do you think that if you reduce that for too long, okay. Do you think if you reduce that for too long, maybe my body has stopped producing enzymes to break down the fat I'm intaking? Like because he's eating less, could it be less efficient?
I think we have to shelf this question. You know, again, there can be gallbladder, liver issues. You know, you should be able to tolerate fat, you know, some kind of fat. So perhaps there's something else going on. That's what I would think about in that regard.
Awesome. I think that I'm very happy with this. Next month, we're going to be talking about men's health, but anyone is of course welcome to come back. I will be putting this on. Don, do you have something to say? Is it about olive oil?
I think this is our best. I got to be honest. I think the questions didn't stop. We had good mojo today. I know you think that we think there's nothing. It just that olive oil was a complete curveball. It was just, sometimes you get asked something and you're like deer in headlights. And that was just me.
You know what? I needed this because I went for a run like an hour before, and then my dog, my puppy, I have a puppy. She just jumped in a swamp, and then I had to physically lift her out of the swamp. And I'm like, this day it's just going sideways. And then I'm like, you know what though? I get to come on here and talk to you guys, so it's a win.
Oh man.
And a dog, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Thank you so much for everyone who came. We'll be back next month, and I will send out an email to everyone who came and everyone who said that they were going to come but didn't as well, with a link to the YouTube.
Every month.
We're here every month.
Forever.
Emily likes your moves.
Bye guys, you're the best. Thank
Bye.
you. And Elisa, we love you. Thank you.
Thank
We
you
love
guys.
you.
You guys are the best. Bye.
Bye.